You have likely felt this before. That moment in a conversation where something shifts. A micro-expression, a word chosen just a little too carefully, a silence that lasts too long.
You catch it, you notice it, and then you look around and realize nobody else did.
For a second, you genuinely wonder if you made the whole thing up in your mind. You didn't. What is happening in those moments isn't overthinking, and it's not something you invented. There is a well-researched reason some brains work this way, and if this sounds like you, listen. Nobody has ever explained it in a way that actually felt true to your experience. Let's break it down. Every brain is constantly filtering the world around it. Right now, there are hundreds of details in your environment. Your brain has already decided most of these aren't worth your attention. It's doing this on its own. Like a bouncer at a door, deciding what gets in and what stays outside. The process is usually efficient.
For most people, that filter runs pretty hard, built to get a good enough picture of what's going on.
Most of the time, that works fine, but it has a limit. There is a concept in psychology called latent inhibition. Basically, it's the brain's ability to tune out things it's already decided don't matter, keeping your awareness clear. High latent inhibition means a lot gets blocked before it ever reaches your awareness, keeping the background hum away. The change in someone's posture, the slight weirdness in how something was said, all filed away as background noise. For most people, that's the right move, but some people have lower latent inhibition, letting more information through. More signals, more detail, more information. On its own, that's not actually a good thing without the ability to make sense of it. Without that ability, it would just be overwhelming. What makes the difference is what the brain does with it after. In the 1990s, psychologist Elaine Aron identified something called sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in many people.
What defines it isn't being fragile or too emotional, even though that's usually how it gets described. At its core, it's about processing things more deeply, taking in more, and sitting with it longer. Picking up on patterns that other people already moved past. Aron's research described this as a built-in evolutionary trait, a kind of stop-and-look-before-you-act strategy found in over 100 species. There's a simple way to understand why this matters. In 1999, psychologists ran a study where people watched a video of a basketball game and counted the passes. While they were focused on that, a person in a full gorilla suit walked right through the scene. About half the participants didn't notice, not because they weren't paying attention, but because they were paying too much. When the brain is locked onto one task, it starts blocking out everything that isn't directly related. The gorilla got filed under not relevant and basically stopped existing. This is called inattentional blindness. The more tightly focused your attention is, the more invisible everything else becomes. Now think about what it means for someone else. You're watching the basketball video, you're counting the passes, and you also see the gorilla. You notice one of the players looks tense, and something about the whole thing feels slightly off to you. Same video as everyone else, completely different experience of it. But there's another thing that usually gets left out. That way of taking in the world doesn't feel like a strength at first. It feels confusing. The person who ends up being unusually perceptive spent years feeling slightly out of place without being able to say why. Saying something that felt obvious to them, and watching it land like it came from nowhere. Sensing something was wrong in a situation weeks before anyone else said anything, with no good way to explain. And over time, something specific starts to happen. When you keep picking up on things that other people miss, you start to quietly question yourself.
It doesn't happen in an obvious manner. You just hesitate, hold back.
You second guess, and that's not a lack of ability. It's what experience teaches you.
It's years of being right about things and watching it not matter, which slowly trains you to trust yourself less. It's a learned response to a very specific kind of life, and it tends to create a particular kind of person.
Someone who can read a room really well, but freezes up when it becomes personal.
Because the closer you are to something, the harder it is to see it clearly. Okay, there's also a real cost. If your brain is taking in more, it's also working harder to deal with all of it. A brain imaging study found that people higher in sensory processing sensitivity had noticeably stronger activity in parts tied to awareness, empathy, and making sense of what you're feeling, including regions linked to how we pick up on other people's emotions.
The brain isn't tripping up, just multitasking a lot, which is why social situations can wipe you out.
Others are just following the conversation. You're tracking tone, timing, body language, what changed and when. What's happening down there?
It's nothing, just talk.
Doesn't look like nothing. They seem really upset. And there's no real way to turn it off. It just keeps going. Socially, this creates something that doesn't often get named. When someone consistently reads a situation that everyone else only understands in hindsight, people around them go one of two ways. Either they value it and start relying on it, or without really knowing why, they feel a little uncomfortable around it. Because when someone sees you clearly, even without meaning to, that can feel exposing in small moments.
Conversations shifting when you enter, accurate insights dismissed as luck, a subtle sense you noticed something you weren't meant to. No one says it outright, but it quietly shapes your relationships and how much of yourself you let show.
There isn't a tidy answer. Perception like this is neutral on its own. It doesn't automatically make life better or worse. It becomes useful or exhausting depending on the context you're in and whether you've learned to trust what you're picking up on. For most people who relate to this, the real cost isn't the perception itself. It's the second guessing. It comes from experience, from being right in situations where it didn't matter, and slowly learning that accuracy doesn't always translate.